All signs point to this. After a season where the Toronto Raptors dealt away most of their veteran players, Darko Rajaković recently coming out and saying how the Raptors are leaning into their short-term rebuild, and Masai Ujiri's just overall philosophy to his recent transactions and moves. Day by day, it's becoming more and more likely Jakob Poeltl is getting traded away this offseason. So we're going to break down all of the signs that point to this trade happening, trade destinations for Jakob Poeltl this summer, and whether or not these moves that are getting proposed, that are getting rumored, make sense for this Toronto Raptors team. Because frankly, there has been a ton of stuff coming out in recent weeks that put together, combined all into one, indicates that Jakob Poeltl is probably on his way out this summer. And frankly, recent quotes from Darko Rajaković are the big ones. We recently covered this in a video, but I'll summarize and break it down here as well. If you want the full deep dive in Darko Rajakovic's quotes, check out the recent video. But essentially, he came out and said he doesn't want the process to drag out 5 or 6 years. For we want to be a competitive team again in 2 to 3 seasons. So essentially, Darko Rajaković has come out and said he's acknowledging that a rebuild is happening. This team is currently undergoing a restructure, a retool. We were not a strong squad last year. And he predicts that 2 to 3 years is the point when the Toronto Raptors will be back to being competitive, to being a playoff team, to being an upper echelon squad in the Eastern Conference. And he also said in that interview that you see this draft is considered to be one of the weaker ones in the last 10 years. The next 2 drafts are extremely high quality, with a lot of good players who can contribute a lot and change the franchise. So again, this combination of quotes indicates that yes, the Toronto Raptors are not planning on doing a little Detroit Pistons rebuild, retool where they're horrible for a decade, for 5, 6 seasons. He said, use that quote directly, but they do look at the upcoming drafts, the next 2 drafts in particular, as a gold mine, a place where the Raptors can land some top upper echelon prospects while sort of bringing in players around that Scottie Barnes, that 22 to 24-year-old timeline that we currently have built up from last season's trades, trading for Immanuel Quickley as well as Barrett. While some Raptors fans are hopeful that, hey, maybe we keep this group together or we try to make a push at the start of next season, but essentially the front office is trying to take a realist approach with the current structure of this roster and says, hey, this squad probably isn't going to cut it in terms of making a deep playoff run, so let's continue to hoard assets, let's continue to bring in players, and maybe take some guys in that 2025 and 2026 draft selection where we have all of our own draft picks. We have the Indiana Pacers in 2026 pick as well, and potentially other sort of acquisitions coming up into the future. So that's essentially what can be read from Darko Rajakovic's recent comments, and we'll dive in how that impacts Jakob Poeltl later too. And it also is similar sentiment said by Raptors GM Bobby Webster, who said, we have some cap flexibility, we have tradable contracts, and there's a lot of things we need to get right. It's not going to be 1 or 2 big moves, it's going to be 5 or 10 big moves. And essentially, tradable contracts, we can look at it essentially here, right? The Toronto Raptors, very tradable contracts are Bruce Brown and Jakob Poeltl. Those are the 2 guys. Maybe Chris Boucher can be counted in there as well. But those are the 3 guys that would be guys that could legitimately get traded. I mean, I don't think Barrett or IQ are going to actually end up getting dealt by this team after being brought in last season. Him, RJ, Scottie, as well as Immanuel Quickley seem like the 3 guys, cornerstones that the team is building around. So Poeltl and Bruce Brown seem like those dudes that are more likely to get dealt. And essentially, if we can look at the quote here again, bring it back up, it's going to be 5 to 10 different moves. And Jakob Poeltl has come out and said that he does not want to be a part of a specific rebuild. He doesn't mind being on this Toronto Raptors team if the squad is going to come out and be competitive and do their best to compete, not be in a rebuilding situation. But from Darko, from Bobby Webster, from the actual moves Masai Ujiri's been making, obviously dealing away Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, all signs indicate that they're going towards a rebuild. And Jakob Poeltl, I should have brought that quote up directly as well, has said he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. He was in the prime of his career, and it makes sense. Doesn't want to be on a team that's kind of, pursuing a little Tampa tank, a little Toronto tank, 2024, going into the 2025-2026 seasons. I don't think we're going to actively tank, but I don't think we're going to have a roster that's crazy competitive unless the Raptors make some home run swings this offseason, completely hit on some draft picks and overperform and get to that next level. But from what the front office people are saying, that doesn't seem to be the plan. And basically, Jakob Poeltl is the piece that can net us the most assets back and is probably the guy that's most likely to get dealt, given he's under contract and return us some value. And one team that seems very likely to make a deal, for Jakob Poeltl will be the Memphis Grizzlies, who Zach Lowe recently came out and said that they will shop the number 9 overall pick in trade talks for a win now player. So that's essentially one potential trade destination. That's why Jakob Poeltl, in the thumbnail, in the vid here, we got a little sort of jersey swap of him with the Grizzlies at this point. And a recent podcast came out, the Game 30 podcast essentially predicted a Jakob Poeltl trade to the Grizzlies in their mock draft. Now, they proposed a crazy trade, which would send Jakob Poeltl, the number 19th and the number 31 overall pick, to Memphis in return for Luke Kennard and the number 9 selection. I don't think that's a good move. I don't think that's a package Masai Ujiri would realistically do. But given how people have talked about this year's NBA draft, the lack of value and things like that, I think it's realistic to potentially trade Jakob Poeltl to the Memphis Grizzlies with Luke Kennard coming back and just the 9th pick. Maybe we have to give up 31 or something, but I don't think we have to give up 2 picks in this year's NBA draft to go get 9th, along with Jakob Poeltl. The Grizzlies are in need of a center. Jakob Poeltl's under a very reasonable contract. I mean, we can look at it here, right? $19.5 million last season, $19.5 million next year, and in 2025, 2026, then a player option in the future. So they have control over his contract. They need a center. He fits kind of what they want to do. And Jaren Jackson Jr., right? The question about Jakob Poeltl playing late in games is his free throw percentage, because he's not a great free throw shooter, right? You can see the percentages there. Not a three-point shooter whatsoever. The free throws aren't on this graphic, but average 11 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 blocks. But he can come in and take some of the fouls away from a Jaren Jackson Jr., so he can be more of that help side defender, blocking shots, protecting the rim on that front rather than bruising down low, because he's a bit injury prone, the all-star there for the Memphis Grizzlies, right? That's Jakob Poeltl just makes sense, especially with them dealing away Steven Adams midway through last season, given his injuries and things like that. He just fits the timeline of the Grizzlies. They're a bit more of an established team. He's only 28 years old himself, Jakob Poeltl. So frankly, he seems like a good fit. And Luke Kennard seems like a cool guy that can come back to the Toronto Raptors. I mean, 45% from behind the three-point line. The Raptors need more shooting. 11 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists. 27 years, so still a little bit older, but fits what the Toronto Raptors are doing. Interestingly enough, only shoots 39% of corner threes, but 45% in threes in total. But, playing around to Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett, that's a huge pause. That's a huge plus. So, basically, given what the quotes are saying and how Jakob Poeltl has already come out and said he doesn't want to be on a rebuilding team, he's happy being in Toronto and stuff if they're competing, if they're going to win, it seems like a misalignment. So the Grizzlies seem like a potential trade destination for this squad. And given all the quotes from Darko and all these pieces, I feel like I could have leaned into this more in the Darko video and all these vids, but I wanted to make a whole thing combining all of the topics because, frankly, it just looks like a Jakob Poeltl trade will be incoming, whether it's in the NBA draft or at some point in the offseason. But let me know what you guys think about a potential Yak deal in the comment section down below. Where would you like to see him go? Where would you like to see the Raptors get back in a potential deal? Or does it make sense to even trade him at all? Let me know in the comment section. You guys best swing as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.